Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of NHLN Opinion Plus, a weekly series airing every Friday. This is a space for opinions where we talk about current events and questions the Latino community is curious about. Since 1949, May has been Mental Health Awareness Month, and today we are joined by Ken Norton, Executive Director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. He led the development of NAMI NH, Connecticut Suicide Prevention Program, which has received national and international recognition for its community-based approach to suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. Welcome, Ken. Thank you for joining us this week.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Thank you for being here. So usually I like to start by asking what the National Alliance on Mental Illness mission and history is. If you can just talk about that.
Sure, thanks. Well, I'll start with our mission. Our mission is to improve the lives of all people impacted by mental illness and suicide. And we're not treatment providers. We do that through support, education, and advocacy. And the Alliance is really sort of a three-tiered organization, meaning that there is a national chapter or the overall national organization, and then state chapters. We are the state chapter for New Hampshire and local affiliates. The New Hampshire chapter started at the kitchen table of our founder, Peggy Straw. And Peggy was also one of the founders of NAMI nationally. And she wrote to program directors for departments of mental health throughout the country asking what supports and services they were providing for families. And then she was connected with this gathering in the Midwest, and she went to that gathering in the late 70s, and that was the origins of NAMI. She came back and put a sleeping bag in the back of her car and drove around to different parts of the state to meet with other families, and that's how NAMI New Hampshire started.
It's always amazing to hear how an organization, an alliance starts, It's very interesting.
It was certainly very grassroots, and, and we're now, 50 plus employees and many, many, many volunteers. We're still at heart a volunteer organization. And it's we're very fortunate to have a very strong NAMI in New Hampshire chapter.
That's very impressive. That's a huge growth from where y'all started. So through the pandemic, it has definitely taken a toll on a lot of people's mental health. So I was wondering what unique challenges has the organization faced due to the pandemic, and how has your organization coped with these challenges?
Yeah, I think like other organizations right at the outset, there was just how do we pivot to continue to provide the support and educational programs that we're known for in a virtual world. We were very fortunate that technology-wise, we were, at least for our staff, we were pretty well outfitted, and it was a matter of then just becoming more familiar with some of those platforms and then helping to get that technology to our volunteers, because our volunteers do a lot of those educational programs, speakers, and support groups. I think one of the toughest challenges was in the support group areas, because those met in person. There were a comfort level at seeing other people's faces. They typically met in in neutral locations like church basements or a library or some other type of facility, and those facilities closed down right away to the public. So we had to figure out how to move support groups into a virtual setting and how to provide those supports in that way, and to come up with protocols for our volunteers. How do you screen people in a virtual setting? How do you keep from being bombed or interrupted? What types of safety mechanisms can you do to ensure that people have some level of safety and comfort in coming into those rooms? I think the plus side has been that it's really opened up for, there's definitely a silver lining here. where most of our affiliates operated on a kind of a regional basis, and those support groups were regional, or some of those educational programs were regional. When we started doing the educational programs in the virtual world, we had people from the North Country coming to, what would have been an educational program in Nashua or the southern part of the state. And we had other people that, because of transportation or caretaking concerns or other schedules, had not been able to participate in educational programs or support groups, able to come and participate in the virtual world. And certainly I think treatment providers saw the same thing via telehealth. So there has definitely been some pluses and minuses. I think the other really challenging part is that it's very clear that the pandemic has had a profound impact on people's mental health across the lifespan, and that's relative to stress, anxiety, depression, particularly for youth and young adults. We're seeing that, and meeting those needs collectively as a state has been a challenge.
Going on to the broader community when it comes to mental health, like I said before, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Can you just talk about why it's important to acknowledge this and what can we do to be aware?
Sure. There continues to be a significant amount of discrimination against people with mental illness. And, national statistics, and I don't think it's any different in New Hampshire, show that upwards of 50% of people with mental health conditions never seek treatment or don't, regularly seek treatment. And I think that's so unfortunate. And then there's a group of folks that don't seek treatment until they're in crisis, and we want to avoid that. So events like Mental Illness Awareness Month and the different activities that are taking place that increase awareness relative to mental health concerns, I think just help to bring people together in a way and have them understand that it's okay not to feel okay, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help.
I like that. It's okay not to feel okay. I think that's a super important quote that you said. And it should be normalized, So education, you roughly touch upon on it. According to your website, education is the heart of what you all do at NAMI. So how do you all incorporate education into your program, and why do you think that it's one of the most important aspects?
Again, I think that, part of the opportunity to increase awareness is by letting people understand what mental illness is, and that it is an illness and that it can impact anybody. It doesn't matter gender, race, socioeconomic status, age, all of those things. We are all vulnerable to mental illness just like any other illness. And the educational part of it is really important, whether that education is for the person themselves to understand about their mental health condition, what that diagnosis means, what some of the best practices or evidence-based practices are for treatment, or for their family members and their loved ones, and how they can best support and or advocate for that person, or for other people. And again, our mission is to improve the lives of all people. So for treatment providers, for neighbors, for community members, we do a lot of work with law enforcement around their response to people with mental illness. For schools and educators, how they can respond to students, for health professionals. So it really runs the full gamut in terms of the educational programs that we offer. And a lot of those educational programs are accompanied by speakers. We train our volunteers, people who have mental health conditions or their family members, or perhaps somebody who has attempted suicide or has lost a loved one to suicide, how to speak effectively about these topics. And those speakers tend to be the most powerful educators, because that's hearing somebody's firsthand story is what really changes people's hearts and minds.
So with conversation, how do you believe is the best way to start a conversation when it comes to mental illness and mental health?
Well, I think being direct is really important, and first of all, for people with mental health conditions to be upfront if they feel comfortable in talking about it. And I think that that's where some of the biggest changes are. But I think also for loved ones, for friends, for family, if you notice changes in someone and you're concerned and worried about them, asking them directly about how they're doing, or gee, you don't seem to be yourself lately, or if you're worried about somebody relative to suicide, asking them directly if they're thinking about harming themselves, or if they feel like they don't want to live anymore. Being direct is really important, and again, as you said, Patricia, normalizing these conversations is very important. Talking to your children about, hey, what is it like to now be back at school, or what is it like to not be in school and to do these Zoom sessions? What is it like? How has the pandemic affected you? How has the pandemic affected your family? All of these things open the door to more conversations about mental illness.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate that. So, for NAMI, what kind of advocacy are you all involved in, and how can someone participate?
Again, our advocacy is the full spectrum. So it starts with advocating for yourself, and we have some of our programs teach people how to advocate for themselves, or our programs for family members and loved ones, how to advocate on behalf of your family member with a loved one, your family member or loved one. And in terms of getting them better treatment, getting them more timely treatment, all of those pieces. And then advocacy really goes from there into systems level advocacy, whether that's at your local, what's happening in your local community. Maybe you want a better response from law enforcement to people with mental illness in your community. Maybe you want your school board to do more, educational programs. Maybe you want to participate on, the board of directors of your local health center or mental health center or some other program. And then right on up to state advocacy, legislation, policy like the development of the 10-year plan, and then federal legislation like the recent 988 legislation, where we're going to change the current mental health suicide prevention hotline, the 1-800-273-8255, in July of 2022. That will become a 3-digit 988 hotline. And what I think everybody thinks it will morph from a suicide prevention line to a mental health crisis line. So advocacy is really important. And again, that powerful connection to people's stories is what it can be most effective in advocacy efforts.
Yeah, I heard about that 3-digit number prior, and I think that's a huge win.
It is. I'm very excited about it, and New Hampshire is taking steps to start planning for the implementation of that. We will all have to start using the 603 area code when we, dial phones in our area in the next 6 months. We'll have to switch to that as part of that switch nationally, but I think it's very exciting, and I was very involved in that advocacy effort at a national level. So it's great to see that happen.
Congrats on that, and thank you for doing that advocacy and your team as well. To wrap up everything, what are different ways for people to get involved and support your organization, and also what are available resources available for community members?
Sure, great question, and we have an information and resource line that's available to people, and we also have a website that is full of all kinds of resources, and some of those are specific to mental health resources for the pandemic. We have a special section for Black, Indigenous people of color, and mental health resources for them. And there's lots of different resources that are available through NAMI New Hampshire. Relative to involvement, there's a lot of ways to get involved. Our walk is coming up. It's going to be virtual again, but it's on October 10th. There are ways to become involved as a volunteer and get trained as a speaker or a educator or a support group facilitator and leader, or to take our advocacy training. So all of those things coordinated through our website or through the information and resource line.
Amazing. We'll definitely put that in the web aspect of this. So thank you so much for talking with us, Executive Director Norton, and for being our guest here on NHLN Opinion Plus.
Thanks for having me, and keep up the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely do.
Okay.
Tune in next week for another episode. Follow us on Twitter at NH Latino News and Instagram at NH_Latino News. I'm Patricia Lim with NHLN Opinion Plus. See you next time.